Liang has been making major waves in the Archer community as he is a very, very powerful commander. And he's definitely shaken up the top 7 Archer marches. So today, I will be revisiting the top 7 Archer marches you could run. I will start off with 1 march, 2 march, 3 march, and I will keep going up until I reach 7 marches. I will also give you advice along the way for running only Archer commanders, and I will justify all of my decisions. If you are looking to run any number of Archer marches, this is the video for you, and it's going to give you a ton of valuable information. So let's start off with only one Archer March, and the best singular Archer March in the game currently is a Boudica with a Zhuge. Boudica offers an absolute boatload of skill damage on her active skill. She has an amazing debuff. She also reduces the target's march speed. She has a nice amount of march speed on herself. It's 10%. It's not crazy, but it's nice. When she loses 20% of her units, she gains 30% increased defense. And she also just has straight 30% attack, which goes quite well with Zhuge. She also has a bunch of skill damage taken reduction. Also, on top of that, she has a chance to reduce the amount of normal attack she takes by a lot. And then her 4th skill is nothing to write home about, but the healing factor makes it really good for AoE farming. And her expertise makes her basically silence immune. Pair that with Liang, who is an extremely high damage, very glass cannon commander. He does have a lot of health though, which goes well with Boudica because she has no health. She is a great commander with him, especially as well since Liang gives her an extra 50% chance to negate silence, which means it goes from a 80% chance to a 90% chance because it goes 80, half the 20 becomes 90. So that's one really, really good thing. Liang is obviously the current best damage commander in the game by far. He actually beats Joan of Arc by quite a bit, and he's trading really, really good in the field. I've been using my Liang and I'm absolutely loving it. Now, some alternatives to the Liang with Boudica, you could run a Boudica with a Cyrus, a Boudica with a YSG, or a Boudica with an Artemisia, and I'll go over those commanders a little bit more in depth a bit later. Also, Boudica with Henry is an option if you just want extremely high single target damage, but I'm not that big of a fan of Boudica Henry for an actual open field march. Speaking of Henry, if you're running 2 Archer marches, you're going to actually split your Boudica and your Liang. You run a Boudica with a Cyrus, YSG, or Artemisia, preferably Artemisia because Artemisia has a chance to silence Boudica. However, Boudica can basically shrug that silence off, and you just gain 50% all damage. Plus, Artemisia's AoE is still fairly strong, nothing close to Liang's, and not really that close to YSG. It might be slightly worse. She's also got a lot of health and a lot of defense, which is nice. So she pairs really well with Boudica, and that's an old best combo in the game. So now that you've got your Boudica with YSG, Cyrus, or with Artemisia, you would run a Henry V, with a Liang. I don't really think there's many alternatives to this because you definitely want to have a Liang at this point if you're running 2 marches. You could consider still running Liang with Boudica and then running Henry with a YSG, a Cyrus, or a Nebu. That is also an option, but I think it's better off running the Boudica with the Artemisia, YSG, or Cyrus, preferably Artemisia, and then Henry with Liang 100%. Because you have to have the Henry and the Boudica at this point, and it's basically essential you have Liang if you're going for 2 Archer marches. If you already have 2 solid Archer marches, like let's say a Boudica with a Cyrus and Henry with YSG, then you could still run those and you get Liang at a later point. Now, if you're running 3 marches and one of them is a Boudica YSG, I would be splitting that YSG off and I would run a Nebu with a YSG. So Nebu YSG is probably the best 3rd Archer march. Now, there are a few alternatives. You could run a Nebu with possibly any other Archer commander. For example, Nebu Ramses is a thing, or Ramses primary, I reckon. Nebu with Cyrus is an option. You could run Nebu like El Cid, but I mean, at that point, you're getting really ineffective, and I think that Nebu YSG is still the best. Then I would continue with that Boudica and preferably Artemisia or Cyrus. I would run the Henry V with Liang, and then I'd run a Nebu with the YSG. Very easy, make sure you double relic that YSG to gain the extra defense as well, but other than that, that march is going to trade really well. For 4 marches, you're probably running a Boudica Artemisia at this point, and now it's your time to split them. I would be running a Boudica with a Cyrus or possibly a Gilgamesh, preferably Cyrus. I think he brings more to your Murderball. And then I would still be running a Henry with a Liang, and I would still be running a Nebu with a YSG because I still think those are the 2 best combinations for those slots. And then I would run the Artemisia with an Amanaturi. This combination is still pretty good for the most part. I really like how Amanaturi is silence immune. It really synergizes quite well with Artemisia, and I think that is very powerful. Amanaturi's active skill damage is kind of lackluster, but she does get a nice ore damage bonus, which kind of can go counterproductive with Artemisia's ore damage bonus. However, it triggers after Artemisia's ore damage, so it kind of isn't too bad. Sometimes it may overlap for 1 turn, but for the most part, the ore damage is still fairly valuable on that march. Amanitore also has a lot of attack, which is something Artemisia actually doesn't have any of. Artemisia has no attack. So having the attack there is also really nice and kind of helps with that synergy. Best part about Amanitore, though, she's got revenge damage for days. So if you're looking for a very, very high revenge damage march, this is your march. The only issue is after you reach 4 Archer marches, you're really going only damage. Like, Amanitore's only debuff is a rage reduction on her expertise, and she's a very expensive commander to invest in because she's expertise or nothing. If she's not expertise, she's not useful. It's pretty simple. For the other commanders, though, like a Nebu YSG is still going to bring you value. Most people already have a YSG max. You only need Nebu 5511. Henry only needs to be 5511 or 5515 like mine is. Liang could be 5551 and he's still very good. Boudica could be 5551. She's still very good. Cyrus could even be 5551. So you can see these are not as expensive investments. But Amanitore is certainly very expensive and I don't think she's going to be meta for that much longer. So just keep that in mind when you go past 3 Archer marches. Now, the reason I put Cyrus with Boudica, I will just clarify, is I think Cyrus, yeah, his active skill damage is lackluster, but he's got a nice debuff here, not only for you, but also your allies. Additional damage is all additional skill damage. So, for example, if we go to Osiris's 3rd skill, he does additional damage factor for 3 seconds, and that is what he buffs. He doesn't buff skill damage and doesn't buff normal attack, he buffs that. He also does have a nice skill damage reduction, so the amount of skill damage they deal is reduced by 40%, and that is really, really, really good. That makes you basically the most tanky thing in existence. Other than that, Cyrus is really, really good with Boudica because he does have a nice rage engine, and I really like rage with Boudica. And he has a nice revenge AoE, which gives him a lot of damage factor. Now, if you're moving to 5 marches, at this point you kind of stick with what you already have. You stick with the Boudica and the Cyrus, stick with the Henry and Liang because I really like that combo, stick with the Nebuchadnezzar and the YSG because that is still very, very good, stick with the Amanitore Artemisia, that's still fairly decent. And now there are 2 routes you could go. You could bring in your Tamiris now if you want to run 5 marches plus possibly other troop types because the debuff on Tamiris is really good. And if you want to bring your Tamiris in now, I'd either run her with a Ramses or a Gilgamesh, up to you. One thing to note, if you are running her with a Gilgamesh, I would run a talent tree, something like this because you are skipping every single rage talent here and you don't want to get rage on your Tamiris. If you're running Tamiris with Ramses, I would use a talent tree similar to this one because once again here he skipped all of the rage talents. Now, preferably, I would say you'd run the Gilgamesh primary, Tamira secondary. The only issue with this march is you're really missing out on march speed, and I think Gilgamesh is really a 5-5-1-5 commander. You could expertise him, I think that's worth it, but once again, he's a little bit like Amanitore and Artemisia, where he doesn't have as much value anymore, because his debuff is kind of outclassed by CPOs. If you are a pure Archer account like myself, though, you don't run anything but Archers, that debuff is very, very, very valuable, and I'm thinking of getting a Gilgamesh just because of that. If you aren't running only Archers and you get a CPO Prime, Gilgamesh does become kind of obsolete because his debuff does not stack. The same issue is present with Ramses because Ramses' defense reduction also doesn't stack with Nevsky's defense reduction, so unless you're a pure Archer account, not a very good debuff to have because you have a Nevsky who is going to do a better debuff. Other than that, I think that there are arguments for using Ramses and Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is way more tanky and does more damage, arguably. Issue is Gilgamesh has no march speed, but he does have more premium stats. However, Ramses does have a lot more attack, and he has a boatload more march speed, because he can trigger the march speed when he's attacked. Gilgamesh, though, he's a bit of a slow, hulking beast. That's about all he's got going for him. Damaris, though, if you run her, is a really, really good commander, because she is dropping very, very powerful debuffs on the opponents, and those debuffs do a lot of work. The debuff that she uses gives them an extra 3% skill damage. It stacks up to 15 times. She does a fair amount of skill damage herself when her active skill is thrown, and she has another defense reduction, which actually stacks with Nevsky. So a lot of people just say get a 5-1-1-5 Tamaris, but honestly, I think a 5-1-5-5 Tamaris is still very, very good. Issue is it's very difficult to get a 5-1-5-5 commander. So if you are trying to do that, best of luck, but you may end up having to take her to expertise. Because, I mean, if you waste a lot of skill slots on payback, it's just worth it to expertise her at that point. Because why waste the gold heads? I will just go and get the extra stats she does get on her expertise. Now, for 6 Archmarches, you're still going to stick with Boudica Cyrus, Henry Liang, Nebu YSG. You're going to stick with that Amanitore and Artemisia because I really like that combo. And you're going to stick with preferably the Gilgamesh Tamiris. Those are your current 5. And then for your 6th March, you're going to branch off and build another March. At this point, I think you have to get Ramses. Yes, he's a very outdated commander and is not as effective as he used to be, but he's still usable. That's the thing. You're at this point where you need usable commanders. And with your Ramses, I wouldn't actually put another Archer commander. You could consider Queen Ditto just for her damage, but for the most part I wouldn't. I'd put a Honda or a Mehmed, simply because you're really running low here, and if you have a double relic Mehmed, you might as well put him with your Archer Marchers instead of using him with like a CPO or a Nevsky. So using your Mehmed with your Ramses is definitely essential at this point, or using your Honda with your Ramses. I don't really like Ethelfled. I feel she needs the 3 marches to fully benefit, but you could use her to get her slow and her debuff as well. Thing with Honda is he's very tanky. He's got some march speed, he's got some damage, actually a lot of damage. He also has march speed reduction, and he has some troop capacity, which is always nice. I also really like his normal attack reduction on his expertise. Mehmed, however, if you expertise him, he does a lot of skill damage to 5 enemies in a forward shaped area. He also has a fair amount of attack and skill damage, but the best part about Mehmed is his relic. And if you want to use Mehmed, you want to double relic him because his relic is like 30% health, and that's very, 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 very important. Now, last time I made a guide like this, I said don't run 7 marches, and that still stands. I don't even think you should be running 6 marches. Like, it's usable and it won't trade too bad, but you're going to need a lot of archer equipment specifically. You're going to need a lot of archer armaments, and at this point, you're really, really specializing your account. Now, if you're running 7 marches, you're a madman, and I kind of respect it, and I kind of think it's a bit stupid. So what I would do is for 7 Archer marches, I would run a Boudica with a Cyrus, Henry with a Zhuge Liang, and Nebu with a YSG. Those are your still 3 best combos. I'd stick with the Amanatory and the Artemisia, and then I would stick with, at this point, you need to have Gilgamesh Tamiris, and then Ramses Mehmed is still going to stay. For 7 Archer marches, I would be getting, at this point, I would have to say you get Queen Ditto. Yes, she's not that amazing in the field. I actually really don't like her for the field. She doesn't offer much for the field. She has an okay debuff on 1 enemy troop, but there have to be a rallied army. She does do 2000 damage factor, which is all she's got going for her, really. Her second skill, she gets some defense and some attack to infantry and some normal attack reduction when she's only archer units. Her next skill is just garrison. Her skill after that is just garrison, and her expertise is basically just garrison, besides you get some attack. So Ditto is not amazing for the field, and I don't like her for the field. Like I said, she could work with Ramses at 6 marches, but other than that, I wouldn't use her. But if you need 7 marches, you need a Ditto. And then I'd run Queen Ditto with Honda, just because at that point, you're trying to fill in those slots with whatever you can. I said Honda's not too amazing, and I still stand by that. He isn't as amazing as some people think, and I think that in the near future, he won't be relevant anymore. Other than that, though, you could consider Ditto with Thutmose. Thutmose does have a really nice relic, and I won't lie about that. I do like his relic. Edward of Woodstock's relic may be good. I'm not sure. We haven't truly seen it yet. So if you're watching this at the time of Edward of Woodstock's relic and it's really, really good, then you could consider Edward of Woodstock with Queen Ditto. Or you could consider El Cid with Queen Ditto, but once again, not a very good combination. So I would say either Thutmose and Queen Ditto or Queen Ditto with Honda. So the top 7 marches for all archers are Boudica Cyrus, Nebu YSG, Henry Zhuge Liang, Gilgamesh Tamiris, Amanatory Artemisia, Ramses with Mehmed, and then Queen Ditto with Honda. That's your best 7 marches. Now, if I were a normal player, a free-to-play, or anything like that, I would stop at either 2 to 3 marches, and I would use a Boudica with a probably Artemisia or YSG, since most players have YSG, and then I would use a Henry with a Zhuge Liang. If you want 3 marches, I'd just use the Nebu with the YSG and Boudica with Artemisia or Cyrus. That's the most free-to-play combinations I could give you, and they are the best ones. After that, they start to become very specialized and possibly not as good as some other options out there. So I say, really, if you're a normal player, stick with 3 Archer marches. Now, if I gave you some value in this video, giving you my secrets and tips and even telling you the top 7 marches, or if I just gave you an enjoyable time, consider checking out the Archer Syndicate Discord server, which will be linked in the description. There, I will post basically any information of why possibly I didn't upload, if I've got any events planned, aka my jumper group on June 27th, or if you just want to chat with me and ask questions, it's a great place to get in touch with me. I do try to reply to comments, but when comments get new replies, I don't get notified, so I can't respond. If you are interested in chatting with me, asking me, or any of the community questions, the link for the Discord will be in the description. Now, I just want to say thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.